Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
And April Collins.
Hi there.
Today we will be discussing the 10th episode of Fruits Basket. It's Valentine's after all. Warning, spoilers for everything that has aired up to this point. Some of us have read the manga, some of us have already seen the early 2000s version of the anime, but we won't be spoiling anything beyond episode 10. You can find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, on Spotify, or on YouTube at youtube.com/overlyanimated. All right. Tell me, what are your thoughts with this episode? This was a lot happened in this episode. So just keep we'll talk about those things. So try and keep the general thoughts brief because I know it's so, I want to say all the important things immediately, but we'll get to them. Just brief general thoughts, April.
So this episode, there was a lot that happened in the episode. And not in the bad way, which is good, because I felt like it was all really relevant things, and I enjoy every single episode, so I can never complain whenever an episode feels longer than it is. Super general thoughts. Hanajima is the best.
She's so good.
She continues
keeps being the best.
She just continues to be the best. And Tohru is still as precious and as innocent as always, and I love her. There's a lot of other things that I definitely want to talk to about, all of the stuff with Shigure and his whole conversation with Hattori and just all of the Kyo stuff. Wow, what are we doing? I just want to know
what is happening? What is going on?
Yeah, and just so much. And then we also I will say it's kind of nice to even though I may not necessarily be happy about it, I'm glad that we've kind of gotten a lot of Shigure this episode, because we've definitely been missing his whole part of it. But again, I'm not necessarily happy about it. But yeah, this episode was just a lot. There's a lot going on. So
yeah. I don't know if we got something of Shigure, but it's still it's still very little, I feel.
I feel like we got a lot too, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But Michelle, tell me, what are your general thoughts?
This episode didn't go at all the way I expected. I thought it was going to be very fluffy, Valentine's Day hijinks. Are all the girls going to try to hug the boys and they have to run away? And very little of that happened. But man. I was also worried is Kakura going to beat up Kyo again? But I think this was the perfect amount of Kakura. She was definitely holding back a little. And now I like her so much more because of it. I'm very much on her side now. I feel we definitely needed this episode for a couple of reasons. I was also man, we're going to talk about Kyo too, but it's real hard to, I'm still Team Yuki, but I will say this episode gave you a lot to think about for the Team Kyo side. So they're repping both for the foreseeable future.
Indeed.
I like this episode. A lot happened. Yeah, a lot of plot stuff. I just, I wish, this is one of those shows where I kind of do wish that we could just binge it, because there's, obviously so much we don't know, and it hurts, because I want to know everything right now.
Yeah. You could just read the manga. No! That you could binge. I'm not saying I don't encourage it. I'm kind of loving this kind of weekly kind of thing, because I am so used to binging things nowadays. So it's kind of
thanks, Netflix.
Yeah, thanks, Netflix. But now it's it's kind of nice that I'm I like having it, letting it simmer a bit and being ooh, but what does this mean? And what could this, I like the theorizing, and I don't feel like we get that with binging.
Yes. I like it too. Plus, the first time I watch things, this might be totally, I might interpret things totally different from the second time or third time that I watch it or something like that. And whenever you binge it, you don't necessarily get an opportunity to properly process or things like that.
Totally. But yeah, I am going to agree that Hanajima continues to be the greatest character in this world. And also, who is Shiraki Sensei? Where were you?
Yeah, she's so cool. Why have we not seen her before? She's hilarious.
I love her.
She's got this like beauty mark right under her eye, and I'm just like, whew, where have you been? Like, I want an entire like mini episode just with you and like getting to know your life. Like, what are your interests? Like, tell me everything about you. Oh,
why
man.
are you so amazing? Like, can we know you more? Like, are you single? What's going on, girl? Like,
I mean, honestly, like, and this kind of makes it really sad, just because with anime, whenever I see a woman that's not a high school student, I always get so excited because they're almost never, they rarely exist. So I'm just like, I want to love you. You're my favorite now. Like, can you please appear more? Can we get like a side story with you, please? Thank you. Like, are you like the boss in like in Uo-chan's like gang? Because you seem very intimidating. Like when she was like, "I'm gonna dye your hair black if you even mess with me." I'm just like,
Harry just has hair dye.
I know, that's hilarious. She just keeps that in her pocket.
Cause and Kyo's just like, "But that's my real hair. I don't know what you want me to say." And she's just like, "You're lying. You're lying. I know you're lying." And it's just I love her. I love her so much. And I only got like a couple seconds of her and I need more. But yeah, so let's just start with Kyo. Let's just go chronologically with the episode. So from the beginning of this kind of first half, we get that he's not feeling great. Like there's something bothering him. And then in the beginning, I kind of conflated that with his whole like nerve with like Kagura. I was like, oh, like that's why he's like so scared because he's just been trained to like fear Valentine's Day because of Kagura that he inadvertently has a nightmare without not realizing it.
Yeah, I thought the nightmare was like a separate thing, and that's why he was all ticked off.
No, yeah, but it was watching it the second time. I was like, no.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was like, at first I thought it was because of Kagura, but no. Then I realized, oh no, he's been on edge for a while. There's something bothering him, and it's not. And it was like kind of like a clever trick that the show did in kind of like saying you have to pay attention to notice that he's not upset because of Kagura. There's something going on, at least in the beginning with that nightmare, which we don't see. But I'm like, is that like the flashback? Is that connected with the flashback that we saw very briefly? I don't know. But tell me from what we've seen because the Kagura thing is like, it's fluff. It's like, okay, it's like Valentine's, whatever. But like, how has your perception of Kyo changed?
Well, I mean, I think me and April kind of talked about this maybe the second episode of the show, just like, because Kyo's personality feels so different now. And I think that's just like, in part, the show team trying a lot harder to appeal to his struggle side, as opposed to him being like more cocky or abrasive or annoying. And I think this was like a really good reminder episode of that, because like he's really spooked by something. I think that's the first time we've like had kind of a cold open with something that's kind of scary. Like we've had scary moments before in episodes, but I feel like that just already set the tone for a more serious type story that they wanted to tell with Kyo, and like potentially Shigure too. But that was something that struck me. I feel like my perception of him's like the same, but just more so, because we're getting this sense that he is like at his core a fragile boy with maybe a heart of paper that will cut if you are too close to it. And I mean, there's definitely a lot of pain there, and there are things that he's legitimately terrified of, and it's hard to not feel for somebody who's so scared about something that they can't even talk about or think about. Like he kept saying, like he can't even think about it. Like it hurt too much. So, I mean, it just like makes me want to give him a hug, you know? Like, poor boy. I just feel really bad for him, and I want to know what went down, but like, it's clear he is not in a place to discuss that right now in the story.
Yeah. What about you, April? Like, where has Kyo left you?
I'm concerned, obviously. I mean, I'm concerned for every person of this family. Yeah. But like, even more so with Kyo, because again, like, you know, like Michelle was talking about how Kyo's so different this time around than he was in the first anime, and that you know, like it's kind of like a lot of his terrors are a little bit more real, and we're like it's being introduced sooner too. I mean, not to like spoil anything, but like, so here's like the introduction to, because we hear a lot about like Yuki, and like his struggles with like being the rat and all of this stuff, and really all that we've gotten a lot of in terms of like Kyo's kind of horrifying backstory is that like he's the cat and he's not allowed in, and so this kind of sheds light onto I guess more of that like inner workings of what's going on for him in terms of where he lies with the Soma family. And obviously it's not good. It's violent based off the flashback that we got.
Yeah.
And I think something else that's really interesting that was sort of brought into light that I hadn't really thought about too is that because Tohru mentions like them being and like that, you know, she can feel their anxiety or something like that, or she knows that it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And so even for, I guess, like Tohru to sort of call out that, because I mean, she's such like a bright and positive person, even in like the darkest of situations from what we've seen of her, for her to even point out like, I can tell that you're anxious. I mean, she's not saying that to them, but for her to point out that they are anxious is, it's kind of a big deal. And then for all of that to also tie in with the fact that Shigure, kind of pushed him with just saying something about, it's interesting that the conversation about his relationship with Yuki is what kind of set him off. And so it's almost, and then based off like, you know, like he can't be friends with Yuki, like that's not something that's feasible, is an interesting sort of something to point out or to say, because you know, we're like, okay, well, what is it exactly that happened between Yuki and Kyo to make, you know, for there to be such tension? And so my guess is that the flashback that he had has a lot to do with that, and it's got to be something horrifying. And I don't think it was something caused by Yuki, or you know what I mean, but it's one of those things where like as a result of that, he feels he shouldn't be that close to, you know, someone in his family. And that's really like, that's sad that something so horrifying would bring you to like not want to be around like a family member. And I mean, I've had like, I guess I can relate to it in a sense too. And so that makes me even more concerned. So because I'm like, oh, like sweet angel, like if it's what I think it is, then like I feel you and I've been there before. And also that's just horrifying that anyone would ever have to go through that type of situation.
Right. So let's talk about this relationship. So it kind of started, what really kind of kicked it off was because Kagura had showed up for Valentine's Day because, of course, it's Kyo. She's got to see him. She shows up and she's great. And Michelle, you mentioned it in your general thoughts. Like she does seem a lot more tempered down now. So it's a little. So she's much more likable.
Yes.
So, and it's funny because she's just screaming like, love, Shatem! Like, it's great. But she kind of, basically, she suggests, hey, let's go on a double date with Yuki and Tohru. And, again, Yuki and him are completely against it until they see Tohru's face, and they're like, we can't say no to this. We have to say
I love that Tohru's like, I'm going to go on a date. I've never been on one before. Is that cool? Like, she doesn't really care. Like,
about the feelings
that is
or anything.
with anybody.
Yeah.
She just like wants to go on a date, period.
Yeah, just the concept of a date. She's like, yes, I want to do it. But yeah, so then she suggests, like, let's go. And I think it's because Haru told her, hey, they're getting along better now. And it's just, and then when she tells him that, that's what kind of leads into his conversation with Shigure. And it's just, I'm curious, is he afraid, is he afraid of Yuki? Like, is Yuki one of the sources of his fear? Like, is it, like, Michelle, tell me, like, what, I feel like it's all surrounds Yuki. It's obviously their relationship. That's what's causing the trauma. But is it that he's scared of Yuki, or he's scared of what he's going to do with Yuki? Because that flashback that we get,
it's really hard to tell.
It's really hard to tell. I kind of stopped at certain frames. And then the very first frame we see of that flashback, we see like, it looks like a boy. The angle of the camera looks like it's looking up. So I'm assuming they're kids, and Kyo is shorter than Yuki at that point. And then it looks like he's reaching out to him. And then we get like some liquid. So I'm assuming what I'm assuming is blood or something. And we see something fly. So I'm just like, is he scared of Yuki? Is he scared of him hurting Yuki? Like, what do you tell me? One, how do you interpret that flashback? And two, like, how do you interpret that fear he has? Like, what is it that do you think he's scared of?
This is really hard because I watched that a couple times and I couldn't tell. Like, the thing that we see fly, I'm like, oh, maybe it's an eye patch, or like maybe it's like a face mask, maybe like someone was sick or like hurt already and it was like covering a bandage, and then they got into a tussle. I mean, the theory that Kyo could be afraid of hurting Yuki is really interesting, because that would mean that it's not so much Yuki at all, it's like what Kyo's, like what he could do to other people that terrifies him the most, which leads down a path of like a lot of self-hate, which is not good. But I mean, I think one thing we should consider here, and I didn't think about this last week when we were talking about the last episode, but isn't it not crazy that Yuki and Haru like grew up with this whole thing from the Zodiac story about like, oh, like, yeah, you're the dumb ox and you're the crafty, dirty rat. And they are able to like give each other the benefit of a doubt, have a conversation, and realize those things aren't true about each other and become actual friends. But Yuki's just not able to do the exact same thing with Kyo. Like, isn't that a huge blindside?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
what is, why? I feel like it builds off this, because it's like, well, then what could have happened between those two specifically for their circumstances to be different enough that they can't just make up the same way Yuki did with Haru?
And here's something interesting that I didn't think about. It's like, what if Yuki, like, just... what if there is this kind of, like, again, nurture versus nature? What if there is this, like, just naturally his personality clashes with Kyo's? So just... And, you know, and he hates Kyo because that plays into that stereotype of the cat and the rat. But he can't help but hate him, which makes him hate him more, because he's like, great, I'm trying to, like, rebel against this, and you're making it extremely difficult for me. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're right. That is a very interesting, like, this moment, on top of all the possible things, you're right, there is something that happened that soiled that friendship. Potential friendship.
Plus, like, I know Kyo's always the one who's like trying to pick fights with Yuki, but it feels like everyone's telling Kyo like, hey, you should like stop being mean to Yuki, you should just get along. No one's really saying that to Yuki at all. I mean, it takes two to tango, right? But like, no one's like going, hey, Yuki, maybe you should be nicer to Kyo.
Yeah, that is
nobody ever does that.
I also wonder too if like maybe they just don't see Yuki like egg on Kyo, like the, you know what I mean, like, because it seems like anytime that like another family member is around, then Yuki becomes very like polite and almost like kind of like not non-existent, because a lot of the interactions seem to like circle around like Kyo in terms of like the rest of the family, like especially with like Kagura. And so it's just kind of interesting how Yuki just sort of fades into the darkness. And then, like, so there's not really an opportunity for people to see exactly how, like, Yuki and Kyo, like, interact, except everyone knows they just don't get along. And I think that's probably because, like, Kyo's more, like, outward about it. Like, he's more extrovert in terms of that, whereas, like, Yuki sort of more, like, internalizes it seems.
Because Yuki will say comments, but, like, Kyo starts fights, and that's a much more visual kind of thing that people would remember.
And also, maybe the members who are saying this feel closer to Kyo. You know, because, you know, you have to be, like, close to someone to call them out on their BS. So it's kind of like, maybe they don't feel like they're not close enough to Yuki to be like, hey, you should stop fighting him, because Yuki may be like, who are you to say that? Versus, like, them saying Kyo, maybe they're like, Kyo, I know you. Like, you're better than this. You know, maybe that's it.
Yeah, Kyo is more approachable, that's true.
Yeah, so maybe there's something tied in there. But, okay, so then this kind of leads to, like, the incident between the cat and the dog, between Kyo and the conversation between Kyo and the dog that should be neutered. So Kyo, what was really interesting is that the dog said, why do you talk like it's your duty to hate him being Yuki? Like, with eyes that say that you're afraid to get to know him. So, I'm curious, I'm like, because you mentioned, like, okay, so, Kyo is a walking contradiction because he wants things to change, so he's included in the family. Like, he wants to be part of the inner Zodiacs. That inherently is a revolutionary, it's a radical thing to want in terms of the traditions of the Zodiacs. And yet, he refuses to get along and is scared of the change that an improved relationship between him and Yuki could mean. So it's like, okay, so you want the most drastic change, but you're scared of the necessary change that can happen for that change to spur on. So I'm just like,
well, I mean, I think Kyo, because for whatever reason, he thinks that if he literally, like, beats Yuki in a battle, he'll suddenly become part of the family.
Right.
And I feel like that's not how that works, but there's a reason he thinks that. So I think it's just, like, his unwillingness to get along with Yuki's because he's like, well, I gotta beat him, so it doesn't matter if we're friends. I mean, that's not how I'm gonna get into the family. I have to just, like, conquer him at martial arts or something. So, I mean, like, to me, that makes sense, but it also is, like, not a good strategy, obviously.
Yeah. I feel like that might also, like, him feeling the need to beat Yuki probably comes with everything. Like, I feel like once we figure out whatever it was that took place between them or, like, caused this sort of, like, forced hatred between the two of them, like, everything's gonna make sense and it's just all gonna fall into place from there. Because it just seems like why, because, I mean, Shigure is not wrong. Like, it does seem like it's almost like Kyo's duty to hate Yuki. And so, like, and for him to constantly, like, feel the need to beat him. And so there just has to be, like, a reason for that, you know?
Yeah. So there's this kind of thing causes Kyo to, like, run away, just kind of unable to deal with the kind of the truth that the dog is telling him. Just being like, I can't handle it. So he runs away and Tohru chases after him. And we get this incredible scene between Tohru and Kyo. Incredible. And when I mean incredible,
my heart.
It's like, it not only is it, like, heartbreaking and all that, but I mean, all in the feels, but just visually striking because just the way the body language is placed, right? So you have him literally curled up in a ball, like, turned away from her. He has his back to her. He's literally becoming a physical, like, wall between him and her. Like, the distance between them, you can see visually just based on the body language there and how she's just slowly inching closer to him. Just, like, with every moment, she just gets closer and closer and she still can't, like, touch him. She can't, like, there is no connection there. It's just the way it was storyboarded. I don't know if it was how, because there has to be some sort of adaptation from the page to the screen, but it just was so well done. Incredibly well done. And in terms of voice acting, he sounded so vulnerable. He sounded so defeated. He's like, it has nothing to do with you. So already the words themselves are him creating a distance between them. Like, this has nothing to do with you. Just forget it. So he's not opening up, but also, like, the way it's so beautiful. And also the way that Tohru just understands him. When I first saw him run away, I thought it was because out of anger. I thought he was running away because he was pissed. And then, no. Then Tohru's the one who tells me, no. She's like, no, he's scared. She knows him better than at least me, the audience does. And then, you know, she's like, it's like he's trying to protect something by hating Yuki. She can just read into that, which is, again, emphasizes Tohru's, like, emotional intelligence. And it's like, what is he trying to protect? Kyo, what are you trying to protect? And, you know, he tells her to drop it. He's like, no. And she goes like, you know, it's okay. It's okay to hate Yuki. Like, I'm not going to change it. Like, I don't know. It just showed this wonderful kind of, not pushing him. This kind of wonderful understanding that you can't solve everything in a day, that you have to take it step by step. And he's, like, not ready yet. Her awareness of that and just being able to still comfort him and calm him down and still, like, even though, like, I don't know, it was a beautiful kind of moment of humans interacting in a comforting and in a healing way, even though it's not healed yet. It's like, yeah, but we're getting there. And that was just an important moment. Tell me, what did you guys think of that scene? Like, walk me through it, April. Like, when this was all playing out, like, what were your thoughts?
So I agree. Like, this scene was very, like, it was so well done, and it really captured a lot of, like, the mood of, like, what was going on in the scene. Whereas, like, sometimes, like, it seems like scenes like this are very forced, like, but I could feel, like, that Kyo was scared of whatever, and, you know, like, I could feel, like, how greatly concerned Tohru was for him, because, like, no one else ran after him. She did, and not even, like, Kagura was there. And so, it's, you know, it just, like, I agree, like, the voice acting was amazing. And it's very nice and comforting. Like, Tohru is such an amazing person. Like, she just continues to, like, shine in the story, even though, like, I don't know, I feel like she doesn't get as much attention as she probably should in the show. But, like, I think that it's a big deal for someone to support you whenever you are having, like, moments like these. Like, maybe he was having a panic attack or something. And so it's very important that she was able to show that, like, hey, I'm here, I support you. And something to take note is that it seems like everyone always forces things on Kyo, and he just kind of takes it. Like, and my biggest example of that is Kagura. And so, which is true. And, like, I love Kagura, don't get me wrong, but, like, I get really annoyed because I'm like, he's literally telling you no. Like, and so, like, and that kind of seems to be, like, a theme, though, is that everyone's just like, okay, come on, Kyo, like, you're going to do this. And he's like, no. And they're like, okay, well, you're still going to do it. And he still does it. And so, in a lot of ways that, like, Kyo and Tohru are similar in that regard. But, like, for her to just be, like, accepting of the fact that, like, you don't have to like Yuki. That's fine. That's okay. Like, and I think that's, you know, just being able to comfort him in that sense, just being, like, respectful of his feelings is so amazing. Like,
wow, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's the biggest thing, too, is that, like, no one else seems to, like, respect Kyo's feelings in any type of situation, especially, like, Kagura, which is terrible to say. But, like, but Tohru does. And so I think that's a huge moment for them, is for Tohru to just be there, to be supportive and respectful. And maybe she can't personally relate, but she can, you know, offer that type of comfort. Like, that's insane. Like, I could never have done that at Tohru's age, and I respect her so much. And I think that, like, this is, like, an amazing foundation for what's going to be a beautiful relationship, whether that be romantic or not.
Yeah.
So,
What about you, Michelle?
That's
it. Cut away.
You said so many good things. I don't know how to live up to that. I mean, I'll just, like, I just reiterate kind of what April was saying. Like, I think when I was watching it, I was, like, distantly aware of what this was meaning, but mostly it was just, like, a huge emotional thing where it's just like, oh my God. Like, I feel bad, but my initial reaction was like, oh man, like, now I get it. Like, I get the Kyo thing more now. Like, it's finally starting to happen. And I understand
the ship is starting to happen.
This is very confusing since I've designated Team Yuki. But I mean, yeah, like, the deeper thing is her being able, for Tohru to be able to respect his feelings and his boundaries when no one else really, I think, because, like, even Shigure, even, like, someone who's, like, kind of an adult figure, they assume they know what's best for him.
I mean, I don't think he assumes he knows what's best for him. Shigure is interested in what's best for himself, but we'll get to him.
Yeah, but, like, I'm thinking back to, like, Shigure's first conversation with him in episode 2, where he's like, well, you know, like, it could be good to, you know, get to know people, and, like, they might hurt you, but you'll grow. Like, I think objectively that's still good advice, but it is coming from someone who's like, well, you should do this thing you don't want to do because, like, I know it's probably best for you this way, even if you don't want to. But April brings up this really good point that everyone kind of just, like, walks over his own boundaries for what he wants, and he will go along with it, but very reluctantly. And I do think there's a certain amount of not being heard that comes with that. And I feel like what really struck me was after this, I kept kind of wondering if Tohru was going to, like, touch him to give him physical comfort, but, like, obviously that would have been the exact wrong thing to do with the situation. I'm glad she did not. But when they walk back, he gives her, like, that tap on the head. Second time he's done that. And I think for him, like when he's looking at her and he does it, like that was his way of just being like, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for like letting me feel how I was feeling and not trying to make me change my mind and not like pushing me. Like, thanks for just like being there and letting me do this myself. Kind of like that is a big deal. And like his little tap, like, because he does it so rarely, like it said all those things without him having to say it out loud. Yeah. And that's like pretty great too.
Totally. Do you guys, okay, so I think it was briefly mentioned, we're going to get more into that talk between Hattori and Shigure, but there was, where it's mentioned that they're like, oh, you shouldn't push Kyo too far or else it's going to happen. And didn't they mention something like that? Like very briefly, like he's kind of like a loose cannon. You shouldn't push him that way. That would have been a dangerous situation.
Something like that.
Something, right? So I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? And also, again, he's like, I don't care that Tohru might be in a dangerous situation. I'm just going to let her go and do it because, hey, who knows what's going to happen? But before we get into that, just a very brief kind of side note, just in the way the scene was played. There is this moment where Tohru there's like a cut to like this kind of drawing of Yuki. Where when Tohru's like, this is like a Kyo Tohru moment, and then there's this kind of, she goes like, where she goes like, like Yuki like is like that too, and at first,
flowers.
And at first I thought, I was like, this shouldn't be here. At first, I was like, this took me out. It shouldn't be here. This is a moment between her and Kyo, and it's very much on Kyo. Like, yeah, it's through her mind, but it's like it's all about Kyo. So instead of her like giving us an image of Yuki, it should have just been her saying it, keeping the same dialogue, but not seeing that image of Yuki. Was what I thought at first, and then I started to think about it. Then I was like, wait a minute, is this how Tohru sees Yuki? Like, this is her image of Yuki. Like, this isn't like, it isn't just a simple, like, accurate representation of Yuki from, like, cut to, like, a memory she has of him. No.
This is very well.
She sees him with the flowers. She sees him with the open shirt and the pain and the grasping and the posing. That is how Tohru sees Yuki, and I'm kind of in love with that.
I'd assume that's hilarious. I'd assume they literally just pulled that right out of a drawing from the manga, or like, we're gonna put this here.
Fan art.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's how it read. It looked like fan art. It looked like fan art, or it looked like they're like to one of the animators. They're like, hey, just draw a picture of Yuki, like, or maybe it was from the like sketching of like one of the directors while sketching, like trying to find like trying to capture like the concept of Yuki, and that was what they drew. And I'm just like, and they just put it there, and it's not even like animated. It's literally just like up, down, panning the screen up and down with the image. This is something you can do on like Windows Movie Maker. It's so simple of a move. But at the same time, it's like, that is how Tohru sees Yuki.
Okay.
Like, that is her mind's interpretation of Yuki.
I'm okay with that only because whenever I first saw that scene, I was actually a little like, it's a beautiful scene, first off, but also I was a little upset because I was just like, man, why we gotta bring up Yuki? Like, this is about Kyo. And then I was like, okay, so I like this so much better if it's how Tohru sees Yuki. Yes, okay, I approve now.
Because I agreed, like, that's how I first felt. I was like, this image of him shouldn't have been there. It should have just been, like, voiced over while she still looks at Kyo. And I was like, wait a minute. This is what they were trying to do. This is what it means. This is how she sees him. I like
that a lot.
Me too.
And, oh, man. But yeah, so let's talk about the kind of second half of this episode. Because that was the first half. This was only the first half.
I know, right?
That's how emotionally daunting, like, this episode was. It was... First half was all this stuff with Kyo. Second half starts out with this flashback to a young Shigure waking up from a dream, crying. Mm-hmm. So we get we get very vaguely, we get to know a little bit more about Shigure, about his upbringing slightly. We learn that he loves someone that he can't have. We know that Tohru reminds him of that someone, possibly, or at least she, or I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's that she reminds him of that person, or it's that she reminds him of good, and that
I think that's
makes him
it.
feel bad. So that's a lot. Also, side note, Mogeta, whatever that heck that was, is terrifying. Like, that movie, because this is all happening. This is all happening while the kids go.
Because obviously, this is like the cookie cat of Steven. Like, the monster in that movie's obviously Kyo, right? Like, obviously, we know he has a curse. Kagura spilled the beans on that the first episode she's introduced, and he got super serious. He has a special curse. We don't know what it is, but then they watch this movie about this guy who turns into a monster. Like, that's not subtle. Show.
Okay, it's not a guy that turns into a monster. It's basically Pikachu turning into a bigger Pikachu. And like being a monster.
Evil-looking
Pikachu. So, okay, and interesting, because in that scene of that movie, they were like, don't give in to like your greed or whatever.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
So I'm like, interesting. What would Kyo give into? His anger? His fear?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Interesting. This is very interesting. But yes, Mogeta is terrifying. But yeah, so what I'm saying is, Shigure, all this stuff was happening while the kids were going on their double date. So we were intercutting that with now this is interesting. If they're intercutting this movie that is foreshadowing the future, and we're having this discussion between Hattori and Shigure about the repercussions of Shigure using these kids as pawns for his grand scheme, it's like, foreshadow. This is what's gonna happen.
Totally. I'm buying that.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
Take all my money.
And I just want to take this moment to just really I just want to give an ovation to Hattori for proving that he is the greatest adult on the show. Like, besides Shiraki Sensei, obviously. But like, he is what we've been saying from the very beginning, that Shigure is using Tohru, that she is not, well, at least what I've been saying from the very beginning.
It's true.
Yeah.
Using her, that he is just as bad as Akito, like she is not safe with him. Hattori came through and he was like, no, you're doing the same thing. And he basically voiced exactly what I was feeling, which is, this might bite Shigure in the end. That this is gonna backfire. That he is no different. And Shigure goes like, yeah, I know, and you are right to call me out. Like, that is what I'm doing. See, Tohru, you need to stay away from him. He is the dirtiest of them all. He should be neutered. You have no need to see him in like your kind Tohru vision. Like, no, he's the worst. But what did you guys think of this kind of conversation between Hattori and Shigure, and this kind of second half that we get with him? Like, what is this dream that made them cry? Because it wasn't just him; it was him, Hattori, and someone else.
Some lady, I think.
Some lady that we haven't met yet.
Probably another Zodiac lady is my guess.
Probably another Zodiac. And it's like, what is it that they were feeling? Because Shigure is obsessed with it. He's obsessed with this feeling. It's what he's striving for. Like, tell me, what are your thoughts? Like, April, tell me.
So I'm not really sure, because he talks about like he's trying to capture the feeling of this dream. And so is he trying, like, what is that feeling? They don't say. And it's also really curious because like him and two other people had the dream the same night.
Right.
So like some type of, like, we're prophesizing things, like this is just really out of control. But yes, like I was very upset because I was one of the people giving Shigure the benefit of the doubt. And because I was trying to Tohru it up, and no, I've never been on Akito's side, so I'll say that. But yeah, like, whatever it is, like, I wonder, like, my guess is like it's some kind of like sense of calm or like normalcy. And so I feel like because it's kind of one of those things where like in order to get to like normal or calm, you have to get through like crazy first. Like, you have to get through whatever like manic energy or whatever is out there in the world, prohibiting that. And so I think Like that's what he's talking about. But he's not just using Tohru, he's using everyone to try and get there.
Yeah.
And also, like, shame on Hattori, because even though he's like, I'm not going to help you, but he's also not going to go against him. And I'm like, okay, so you're enabling. Got it. Like, so whatever it is that Shigure is, like, going after, it's a big deal. And it's not just a big deal to him. So it's a big deal to others as well. And I'm really just curious. Like, I just want to know more, because, like, maybe it's something that I could also support, or, you know, like, us as fans could be a part of. And so it's kind of, like, sad that we're painting Shigure in this really negative light. And I totally think that he needs to be painted in it, because he doesn't care if Tohru gets hurt. And Tohru is the most amazing thing in this world. She's too good for all of us. No one deserves her. Not even Kyo, but like it's like shocking in a sense, but also like not, like, because like now we know, like, Shigure is definitely planning something. He's definitely plotting and scheming, and not just to like we know, but like Yuki knows too. And I don't think that we've really.
Does he?
He
knows a lot.
He has suspicions about him, because he talks about how, like, oh yeah, people say like he's like a wave on the beach. I think he's kind of worse. I think he's more like a jellyfish that would, like, sting you.
Right.
So I feel like he has the general sense that there's something up about Shigure.
I thought he said something like outwardly to someone, like
who knows what he's planning. He says something like that.
Yeah, he said that because here's the thing. He said something to Shigure when Shigure like makes Kyo freak out, which made me think he knew what Shigure was planning. But then he says that thing of, he's like, who knows what he's planning? He said that to like Tohru or something later during the double date, which made me think like, oh, then he must not know.
Well, he doesn't know what it is, but like from the first episode, when Shigure comes back and he's like, I talked to Akito, it's fine that Tohru stays here. Yuki immediately is like, well, how did that work out? That's weird. What are you planning? Shigure's like, don't worry about it. And they just drop it. But from the beginning, he's been like suspicious of how that worked out.
Yeah. And I do want to go very briefly back to something that April said, which is Hattori is enabling Shigure. Like, he is. And it's kind of like, isn't it kind of worse, him deciding to not do anything? Isn't not doing anything worse than siding with him or not siding with him? Like, he is basically siding with him, but not...
Yes. I guess, honestly, when he said that, I didn't take him at his word, because he's already tried to help Tohru.
Yeah.
The first time he met her, he was like, look, like, something's going on. I feel like you shouldn't be there. It might end badly. And she was like, no, I'm going to stay. And he's like, okay. But I feel like him being him, he's probably going to get involved anyway. And I think if anything really bad does go down, he is going to be part of that fallout, and he is going to try to at least make amends. But, like, yeah, it's bad to be neutral on a thing you know is going to hurt people. But I think my hope is, like, he, of all the adults we've seen, is the most likely to actually step in and change his mind about that. So I'm just, like, hoping that his actions speak louder than his current words do. Yeah. But, I mean, we don't know. It could end up really bad, so...
Yeah. I will say, at least I appreciate that, at least with Hattori, like that. He said, my hands are dirty too. So he's like, okay, like, I'm already bad. Like, he's very... His
hands being dirty is so stupid, though, because he's covering his almost blind eye. Okay. And what that means is, like, his hands are dirty, quote unquote, because Akito, like, ruined his marriage thing. And that's not him having dirty hands. It's all Akito's fault.
Yeah.
So, like, it is brain, maybe that makes sense, but in reality, that's crazy. He doesn't have dirty hands.
True. Well, I will say also, theory, is the thing that Shigure is striving for, is the thing that made him cry, freedom.
I think in a sense it is.
Because then, if you think, because he said, that brought you, when talking to Hattori, he was like, that brought you and the woman that we have yet to meet, that brought you guys pain, but I still want it. And it's like, well, what brought Hattori pain was the whole thing that happened with his girlfriend, where he tried to get the freedom to marry her, and then his eye almost got destroyed. So... That's an idea. But that's another thing. I'm like, okay, well then who are you in love with that you can't have, Shigure? Like, what?
Maybe. Or maybe
Okay,
it's just that he can't have...
a love thing. I do think it, like, maybe, April, what you're going to say it.
Oh, I was going to say, I wonder if it's just that, like, he craves love, but, like, love overall. Because really, like, there's not a lot of female Zodiac members, as we're already getting into free.
Yeah.
You're saying that he wants the freedom to sleep with as many people as possible.
No! Oh, no! I don't think it's that.
He only likes high schoolers. He doesn't want the adult.
I mean just I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I mean, he wants to be able to, like, an adult woman. He wants to be able to sleep with as many women as possible, but he can't, because if he does, he turns into a dog. And then he has that metaphysical idea.
I think it's say, like, the connection thing. Like,
I think he craves that connection, and I mean, something that, you know, people who, okay, this is a really bad, like, misconception, but a lot of people interpret, like, intimacy as something being sexual, and it's not necessarily that way. But given the fact that he's grown up in this, I'm assuming he's always grown up in this super effed up household. So he probably doesn't have a good idea as to what, like, good intimacy is, or what proper intimacy is. And so, or that it can come in multiple forms. And so, but I didn't necessarily interpret it as that. I just interpret it too, like, because I wonder if, like, him and Hattori and this third person all had the same dream, and then they all woke up, and then maybe, like, that's how the Zodiac thing kind of works, is it doesn't necessarily kick in right away. It happens, like, it happens later, but at a young age. But it's also something that maybe they were like, hey, you're at risk for this kind of situation. And so maybe, like, that's, like, maybe he craves that, he wants that freedom from the curse. And then he has the opportunity to go out and maybe find a man or a woman that he could love, or, you know, like, find someone to be close to, because, like, it's really hard. And he's seen, like, what happened to Hattori. And so, like, if it wasn't for, like, you know, them being Zodiac members, then that situation probably would have played out completely different. And that probably wouldn't have even involved, like, a keto, and wouldn't have been violent. And so I wonder if it's just, like, freedom that he craves. Like, he woke up and his life was changed, and then, like, this is it now. So that's how I interpreted it.
I really like that. Like, this idea that they were, like, normal kids, and then one day they inherit these powers, and then they just can't ever go back to how things were. Because, like, why would it involve all three of them? Yeah. But that makes sense. And it makes sense why they would cry. Right. And I do, like, the thing I'm wondering is, like, Akito, so say they made a bet. If Shigure wins, like, can Akito really promise him to not be a dog anymore? I don't think that's within Akito's power. Yeah. So how would that work if Shigure won?
Well, I wonder if it's something along the lines of, like, okay, it has to involve Kyo, because he's the cat. And so I think this all life, because, like, Shigure even says, like, I got impatient and I pushed Kyo. So something with, like, Kyo's, like, extra special curse has something to do with, I think, everyone's overall curse. And so, like, that's just my theory, because I barely remember, like, the early 2000s anime, and I don't even remember, like, all of, like, the sort of, like, story plotline stuff with that. So this is just my theory, is that something with Kyo's extra special curse has to tie into the rest of the Zodiac. And so, like, something has to happen, and, like, Kyo's got to be pushed, and I don't know. Someone has to break it somehow. That's just my guess. I don't know.
I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, I guess I'd interpret it because Shigure is, like, when he pushes Kyo, he pushes him because he's frustrated that Kyo and Yuki aren't getting along as quickly as he wants. So that implies that his deal with Akito was, like, he's expecting Tohru to fix their relationship, and if they fix their relationship, maybe that breaks the curse. like, I'm not sure how the curse exactly plays into it, but I think it probably is a thing, right? Because Akito already brought that up during the marriage thing. He's like, you can't even break the curse. So the curse is a thing. It's a real thing. But I feel like his thing with Akito was definitely about, like, Kyo and Yuki getting along. Like, I think it involves both the boys, honestly, not just Kyo.
Yeah. And I mean, that would be way too much pressure on Kyo. You know, it has to be both. It has to be both Yuki and him tied to it. It can't just be Kyo.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing about your theory, April, the only thing I have against it is that Shigure said, like, wants to strive to capture what he had in that dream. And if that dream is letting them know that they are the Zodiacs, and that's, like, the first thing, and that's why they wake up crying, like, it wouldn't make sense for him to want to break free from the curse if that is the very thing that he's striving to regain or obtain that emotion. So that's the only thing I can find in terms of the dream. That just doesn't fit, at least with what I saw in the
Unless
episode.
It's like it's a feeling of I don't know, because I guess that does make a little bit of sense too.
Yeah, I mean, I guessed maybe Shigure's honestly, because, like, if he is so willing to do these to whatever ends it takes, basically, right, to hurt people along the way to get what he wants, like, that, there's a certain amount of, like, you need to distance yourself from other people, and you have to distance your care about them, too, to be able to just kind of pursue that without a heavy heart. And I wonder, like, maybe his goal is literally to just, like, not want things. Like, because if every Zodiac member, like, honestly believes that they're cursed, and they can't have a normal life, Shigure believes that, too. He's like, I can't ever find anyone, because I'm always going to be the dog. So maybe Akito's promise to him was like, I'll, like, close your heart, or, like, I'll stop you from wanting to love because you'll never find love. Because, like, the reason I say that is because, like, it's a Valentine's Day episode. Shigure's whole thing is juxtaposed to all the kids going on a double date, having, like, an actual normal time. And that's, like, so removed from his life. It's like, they're in two separate worlds almost. And I think, like, that means something to Shigure. Plus, like, there's that whole line, like, way back again, like, when Kagura first came, and she's like, I want to stay here. Like, you don't understand how it feels to be, like, worried about, like how a girl feels when another girl's there. And then she leaves, and he's like, well, you know, even I get jealous too sometimes. And I always wondered, like, what does that mean? Like, do you love Kagura? Like, is that what that means?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what this means. I think he's jealous of their ability to act like normal people and have love and affection. And that's, like, something he doesn't want to have anymore. And again, I don't know how Akito could take that away from him if he won the contest. But I feel like maybe that there's something about closing himself off and pushing that away because he's afraid of it hurting him the way it did Hattori. Like, that's what I think it might be.
Okay. All right. I have a theory. Okay. It kind of came to me. And it kind of goes against what I had written in the outline. And it's going to sound crazy, but everything you said kind of, in a weird way, also helps it. All right. So what if... All right, let me set the scene for you first.
Okay.
Let me just, we end with him, with Shigure saying, I am the dirtiest of them all. Mm-hmm. And he says, Akito, I'm the one who cares the most about you.
Yeah,
and I read that, listen, I read that, I saw that, and I was like, okay, he's lying.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because, and he's the dirtiest because he's willing to lie and whatever and do all these things.
Yeah.
All right, what if?
Uh-oh.
What if?
I think I know where this is going.
Shigure is in love with Akito.
No!
No. Wait. Just listen. Listen. This fits. April, listen, this is going to help support your theory. So, if, say, for instance, in their dream, they see Akito, and Akito's the one, and basically it's in that dream that Akito's telling them, like, they have this vision of Akito, but like Akito's like in that dream, he's not sick, he's whatever, he's just this like kind of princely figure, like the ideal type of him. And he just goes like, you have been chosen as the Zodiac or whatever the heck. And then and then they wake up with tears in their eyes, the other two tears because they find it so painful. But then Shigure is just like, oh my God, I've met the love of my life. I want to marry this man. This beautiful, beautiful man. And then he's always striving to get to the love that he cannot have. And then he's trying to remove this curse and all that because he thinks in some convoluted way, by removing this curse and breaking it and using all these people as pawns, he can finally get Akito to be happy and be that ideal version of himself that he saw in that dream if he had seen Akito in that dream. I'm just saying. Whoa. And again, it's the Valentine's Day episode, and who does Shigure end with? Like, what is like one of the it's Valentine's Day, we get juxtaposed, we have the double date with these kids in a normal, healthy relationship, and then it's juxtaposed with Shigure and Akito, and it's not a normal, healthy relationship, but it's still a love relationship. Oh, so boy. It's like the parallels of that. And it's just like, what's going on? He is the one person who's willing to challenge Akito because he loves him so much. And that is the end of my...
Okay, like, I think you've made some...
I don't want this. I don't want it either.
But you've made some point... Like, okay, but my thing is... Like, I think part of the reason, I mean, me and April defended Shigure more than you, but like, there were some moments in the past where like Shigure was very just like cold towards Akito, and especially that moment like when they didn't go to New Year's and Shigure sees him like hunched over in the room and he just looks at him and his internal monologue's very cold. And it's a lot harsher than we're used to hearing him. And he's just like, I'm glad to see you reaping what you sow. I cannot imagine that was not how he truly felt about him in that moment. And for that to be true, I don't think he likes Akito that way because he honestly really seems to hate him a lot.
That's what I mean. There's a very thin line between hate and love. And it's a very unhealthy relationship. Very unhealthy.
Well, every relationship is unhealthy in this show. But he also even says that like I feel like it's one of those things where like in order to achieve his goal, he obviously admitted that he's willing to lie, but it's interesting that he tells Akito that, oh, but I love you the most. And so, and then he says like, I'm even willing to like lie to get what I want. And so I took that very much as like him, like telling us, the audience, that like he doesn't love Akito, but he will play along with Akito because at some point, in order to achieve his goal, he has it's like Akito and Shigure are like plotting for this. They're not plotting for the same thing, but in order to get to their separate places, they have to go along the same path for a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like he's like, hey, like if I lead Akito to believe that I'm on his side, he will help me get me closer to like our quote unquote goal, even though our goals are different. And so I really take it as him like sort of like he's just working off of his own like he's just doing things like for himself, and not that like I would love for him to be in love with Akito, because that would just be,
I mean, that'd be so interesting.
Yeah,
I just don't know if that makes sense.
And I just don't know if the show's gonna do that, like, because Akito I don't feel gets any love from anyone, and I don't feel he deserves love from anyone. And I think that it would be really hard to continue on if Shigure, or if, I mean, really there was anyone that was on Akito's side. I mean, obviously Tohru is going to be in some sense, but not in like the way that I guess Akito would want it to be, if that like makes sense. So
Mhm.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, I thought he was lying. When I was watching the episode, I was like, he's lying at this moment. It's just a theory. I'm not placing all my bets on that theory, but something to think about, maybe a different way to look at that relationship. Maybe they are just, very bad for each other, or maybe
unhealthy.
he's so unhealthy. I mean, it would add to the trend of unhealthy relationships in this family. So, but all right, so let's just finish off with something light and positive. We get to meet the editor of Shigure's.
She's
poor-
so cute.
She seems so young. Her
I
voice
know.
is so young.
Yeah. And she's just like
Poor
always
lady.
crying. Poor lady. Like,
She almost committed suicide on the front steps because he wasn't there.
yeah.
Yeah.
She was just like, I'm ready. I'm ready to
I'm
do
ready.
this. And yeah, this poor woman, he has brought her to the brink. And, all I can tell her is to fire him. He's not worth it.
I wonder.
Also, I was surprised. Like, I was like, oh, she's his editor. I would have
Oh.
assumed she was like his agent or something. But
Didn't they
anyway.
even call that she looks really young or something like that? But also I feel like she probably she's his editor, but I feel like with Shigure and given his work ethic, he probably likes to work at his own pace, which
Yeah,
obviously
which is not good for a publisher.
yeah, which
Yeah.
publishers hate, and so they're probably just like, we love Shigure. He's a great selling author. He does good work, but we just don't have the time or patience. We'll send our youngest editor.
no.
Yeah. Oh no. So she's
Hazing.
she's
It's a hazing
the
ritual.
poor-
It has to be
And that
come
makes
on.
a lot of sense, actually. Who wants to go for Shigure? Oh, nose goes. You lost. You have
Yeah,
to do
like,
it, lady.
man.
It which probably explains why she's so high anxiety
Desperate.
too.
Yeah.
It's just please don't run away.
Right.
I need my job.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could also imagine that every other editor has tried and failed, and she's
Yeah.
just the
most
fresh-faced.
persistent. Yeah.
She's the fresh-faced. She just went from being an intern and an assistant to
just
being an
fired her
editor,
off.
and he's her first assignment. And they're just like,
Oh.
you need to get him to work, or else you will be blacklisted in this entire industry.
Oh,
and she's
yeah.
probably desperate. She's just like, can you
I
please?
wonder.
And then she somehow got him to meet a deadline. So then from then on out, she's been he is like, oh, I like working with you. And now she's stuck with him, and she's just like, please, why? I don't want to be stuck with him. I thought this was a one-time thing. And then it just evolved from there. I just gave you a mini fanfic. You're welcome.
I hope we see her again because
I think we will.
We
she's
must.
a delight.
Her,
I
Chiaki
feel
Sensei.
bad that I enjoy her being tortured by Shigure, but
idea. So one day Shigure is at the school at some parent teacher conference, and she's just I gotta find him. So she literally rushes into the room being Shigure, we need the deadline. And then she meets Shiraki Sensei. Their eyes meet, and suddenly it's
Oh my
who
god,
are
that was
you?
not where I thought that was going. That's
Oh,
better.
it's going there. And I'm
Better.
just there you go. And that is the ship. And that is how the beautiful love story between these two women happens. And then he's taking notes because he's oh, this is great material.
Oh yeah, for my next manga, I have
For
to
my
write
next
that.
manga, novel,
Okay.
whatever.
Next girl
That is
novel.
what's going to happen. And then there you go.
and it sells a gazillion copies. I'm buying
Probably would. Yes,
I'd buy
exactly.
it.
We'd
I'd
already
buy
buy it.
it.
But yeah, so that does it for this episode. Any last closing thoughts before we go?
You can go first, April.
I'm trying to formulate them.
Okay, I'll go. So
Yeah.
this is I'm going to summarize my feelings about Shigure this episode. I was really happy they finally did this because I feel like we've been talking about this for a long, long time. And it felt kind of weird to feel we have more reason to hate ACTO than to hate Shigure. But Shigure's been wishy-washy enough that this is a long time coming at this point. But I'm super fine with Shigure being a sketchy bad person. I'm just so happy that he's owning up to it now. Cause now we can really get into it. It's not us just throwing things at the wall for no reason. He admitted it. It's legit canon. So I'm just like, it's a relief, and I'm excited to see what other horrible things happen. Because, like, drama's great, and, I mean, Tohru's got people to protect her, so I'm not initially worried about her yet, but, like, that could change. I don't know, I just, like, I appreciate that this show is, like, having Shigure own up to everything, and be like, oh, yeah, no, like, I do suck, and I am using people, and that's all true about me. I might be the worst one of all of us. Like, thank you! Because now, like, I don't have to feel bad at all, and I just can watch whatever's gonna unfold, so... I mean, I'm just glad we finally got this, because, like, yeah, we've been feeling it for a while, and it's like, are we crazy? No, we're not crazy. He thinks the same thing about himself, literally. So there you go.
Yeah. I will say, I was surprised to see, like, how the actual material, the source material was like, no, we're going to be very clear about about him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I was not expecting that conversation with Hattori, and I'm so glad it happened. And just to kind of add on to that, I do hate Shigure more than Akito. I think there may be a redemption for Akito. I don't see a redemption for Shigure. But that's a conversation for another day. April, what are your closing thoughts?
I agree with Michelle that I'm glad that, like, we're not doing the ambiguous, like Shigure is not an ambiguous character anymore. And, like, I guess, like, throwing it back to, like, Star Versus, like, that was something that we struggled with, like, one of the, like, main characters was that, like, she was just so ambiguous and we didn't know what was going on with her. And that's something that we've been doing for the last 9 episodes. And so I love and I fully respect that the show is just saying, like, hey, like, this is not a necessarily a good character. They have openly admitted to being bad and that they are potentially a threat. And I really I respect that. And so even though, like, it sucks because, like, Shigure is now, like, essentially a bad guy in this show, because he's obviously scheming and he's doing it for selfish reasons. But, like, I agree. Like, I'm excited to see, like, what drama unfolds because of this. Because we, again, like, once you step out of ambiguity, then you get to interesting things. And so now that we're not there and we have, like, very clear cut, like, okay, Akito's very obviously a bad guy. Shigure's, like, a bad guy, but, like, with good, I guess, his personal good intentions, who knows? But, like, now that we have this set out and laid out, we can get to, like, the really, really interesting things and, like, you know, and just see how it all unfolds from here. So I'm really, really glad that we did this. And I'm very excited, like, to go forward.
Yeah. I'll leave a question for the audience to answer and let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know, what is worse? Someone who knows what is morally, who has morals, who knows what is good and what is bad and still choosing to do the bad thing, or someone who doesn't have morals because they genuinely don't know that they are bad. Who is worse? The one who makes the choice or the one who doesn't know that there's a choice?
I think Akito knows he's bad.
I don't know what he knows. I think he's a prince.
I think he knows everyone thinks he sucks, and that makes him sad. I mean,
I think he doesn't realize. I think he genuinely thinks that he just has a lot of power, and that's just how life is, and that's just how life is supposed to be. And he doesn't realize that he is doing bad things. I think he just thinks that he can do whatever he wants because of the influence he has. But then Shigure is like, oh, I know better. You aren't supposed to just do things because of the power you were born with, but I'm still going to do the bad things. So it's like, I'm just saying, I want the dog neutered. Okay, we're going to end. So you can find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Sarah, aka SarahNet. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Beatrice, Hugh, and Michael. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.